The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
Oh, get in. Comfortable?
Check. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the Fantom Zone. 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics. And I'm Noah.
Kayla.
And Jared.
And Jared.
I say it like more childishly.
Every time.
Jared.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You sound like a Furby.
Don't. You know that meat-wide voice?
Oh, yeah. From Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Oh my god. That show
we
is
got it.
the worst.
And so today we're talking about sorcerers in DC.
That's right.
Magic in the DC universe.
Yes. The mages in Marvel just sounded so much better. There's no D word for
I said dazzling?
dazzling in DC.
Yeah. Or
It should just
definite.
be DC magicians or something like that.
Yeah. Oh.
I like how we're discussing the title.
Yeah.
So we thought it'd be good to visit them. We did one strictly on Marvel. And, why not? I mean, DC has a lot of magicians and sorcerers that we need to talk about. But before we get into it, Jared, I know you wanted to say something.
Yes. I want to talk about our Patreon. Right?
Oh,
And
that's what it was.
Yes,
Okay.
because I understand that we've talked about this till we're blue in the face, but I feel like people don't know what they can actually get because there's some obvious stuff they can get when they become a Patreon. There's stickers and T-shirts and stuff like that, but we have a whole bunch of other stuff that they can get, and I want to tell you 2 things about that right up top. 1, it's optional, so you don't have to get this stuff. You can have it though, and number 2. These are real. They're definitely real. Okay. So first thing, you become a patron of our Patreon, a patron of our Patreon, you can have adamantium grafted to your skeleton. Absolutely. Now, here's the thing. I looked it up. Adamantium is fictional, so we're going to use aluminum. And the only guy who will do it, is a doctor that I found in Guatemala. But that's going to be really good. So that's the thing.
We don't want to murder our Patreon.
We'll find out. Here's the thing. It's optional.
Hey, to be fair, Jared's going to be the first one to test this.
I will test all of these.
See?
Okay, the second thing you can get. Second thing, radioactive spider. Yeah.
What? Where did you find that?
Also Guatemala. Radioactive spider look, here's the thing. It can give you the powers of Spider-Man, but I did look it up, and because it's a real world, they can't do everything, so you can only get those powers if it bites you in the eyes or the genitals. Now here's the thing. And a lot apparently, but you will get the powers that way. I think. Okay. Okay.
We'll just send you a little box with a little spider and then just let it bite you. And
Yes.
What
that's-
if we get sued or something, guys? And this is me doing a disclaimer that I was not informed of any of this until right this second.
I hope you won't be
Whenever
sued.
you become a Patreon member, you sign a consent form saying that anything we
Oh,
send
it's like
you...
a waiver.
Yes, absolutely. Now, next thing, you can get our logo, the Fantom Zone logo. You've seen it, Kirby art, beautiful. You can get that tattooed on your eyes or genitals. Now, here's the thing. All you have to do is pay for it, and you can have that done, and we're very excited about it. We will not sue you. Okay, and here's the last one.
You said 2, and this is
this
7.
is the last one. This is the big one. Everybody wants a Batmobile, right?
Oh my God.
No, everybody does want a Batmobile, and I have a Batmobile for you. Now, it is a 1976 Buick Skylark I found in the woods filled with bats. But you can have that if you can find it. If you're a
If you can find it.
if
Is
you,
this also in Guatemala?
I think so. Yeah, I was there. I
The
did
treasure map we sent you.
I was there. I did smoke something the natives called marijuana. So I think this is going to be really good. Okay. Anyway, so join our Patreon, support it.
Yeah, the real things you get from our Patreon: exclusive episodes, discount on merch. You get a bunch of other things. So just check it out.
Heck yeah.
You're so stupid. Anyway, back to mages, mystics, and sorcerers in DC. So I think a good way to start this episode out is not to necessarily talk about the differences between Marvel and DC, but it's kind of hard not to, only because I think magic is completely different in both of them. Of course, you have your normal spellcasters, but one has more of that than the other.
For sure.
I personally think the actual numbers might be, a little different, but we're talking about characters that you see often. Characters that are usually in comics or ones that are put front and center. So you have, like in Marvel, Doctor Strange. He's strictly a spellcaster. Most magic stories revolve around him.
Yes.
But in DC, you have a slew of other characters like Dr. Fate and Zatanna, and even Swamp Thing has a lot of magic that revolves around him. So I think it's really interesting to see how DC's magic works, because most of the schools of magic, I feel like, are particular to that character. There's not like a school.
I feel like there's a weird unification in DC magic that's absent in Marvel's magic.
Yes.
In terms of, I don't know, maybe like the teams in DC are more like you see them together more often or something like that.
Like
but I feel
Justice League Dark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like the magic in DC is more unifying between the characters that can wield and cast magic, as opposed to Marvel has really powerful magic users, but they're kind of disconnected in terms of like the source of their powers working together, all of that stuff.
That's true, yeah, because you have like magic, like the character magic, not actual magic. And then you have like Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange, and all of their magic kind of comes from different areas, but it's like that's them. Like that's where they come from.
Also, check out our Marvel Magic episode.
Yes.
We did one of those, and so you can get kind of a comparison or whatever. I think that's very true. And I think that in Marvel, the problem they have with developing broader, like a broader magical landscape, so to speak, is like kind of Doctor Strange in a way, where he's like the main magic guy.
Yeah.
Whereas DC doesn't have a main magic guy. They don't like Doctor Strange, like the Superman of magic at Marvel, which is a very complex analogy. But no, I mean, I think DC, I had said this, I think on some other episode, that I feel like where Marvel has a really developed and advanced cosmic landscape and some magical characters, it's kind of the reverse at DC, where they have a very like complicated net of like really well developed magical characters.
Yeah, I mean, they even created their comic line to focus on specific magic users. So like Justice League Dark, which is pretty beloved for most DC readers, because you get those characters like Zatanna. I think the current one, it's really interesting because they put characters that deal with the supernatural. So DC's magic really is rooted in supernatural and like cosmic order, as opposed to Marvel's. So you have like Man-Bat, which deals with like the whole transformation type of creatures and stuff. And then you have Swamp Thing in there, and Detective Chimp, and Wonder Woman, which she's technically based in magic, and then Zatanna.
Oh yeah, Detective Chimp is a character. In case you thought he was joking.
Chimp that's dressed up like Sherlock Holmes and has a sword. I love him.
Yeah.
Kayla just hates all animals.
I don't hate
And why is he like that? Well, because comics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I think that's a good kind of starting point with that, is that most of it is based in supernatural or has to do with demons and like the underworld. So like Constantine is a really good example. He has a huge history of just dealing with demons, which most of them are magic based.
Yes.
And that's kind of where his powers really come from, or like his story comes from. He made a deal with the devil because he was dying of cancer, and then he has to go from there. But I mean, I like that DC makes that distinction with the supernatural, and each one is kind of based in that school of magic, as opposed to having like a slew of these characters in the same school of magic.
Yeah. And again, not to compare it to Marvel too much, but I think I'm glad to do it on this episode because I feel like DC's better at it. Sort of illustrates this, is that Marvel, I think, has a tendency to connect magic more towards kind of science-y things. So they have a tendency sort of through the mutant community to connect it to reality manipulation or probability altering stuff. And then they also do that thing where, because the Asgardians, and it's never clear whether they're just like cosmic aliens who, it's because it's like that Arthur C. Clarke thing. They're so advanced, it appears to be magic.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas DC is straight up like, no, our magic is magic, and it's like occult supernatural shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm usually always drawn to like that type of magic.
Yeah.
And so that's why usually even though Doctor Strange is like one of my favorite Marvel characters.
Oh, you don't say.
Because it is magic. But I mean, you have like, so I think the biggest ones in DC as far as magic, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is like Dr. Fate,
Full show.
Zatanna,
Yes.
Yeah.
and Constantine. I think they're really the like helms. And I mean, you could put Spectre in there too.
The helms of Naboo.
Yeah. But I think they're really the ones that are front and center with
Yes.
magic. And they're the ones that are usually called if there's somebody that's possessed. Or
Well, I just
Yeah.
remember we were having a hard time narrowing it down because in the Marvel episode, we were like, okay, so magic is a lot of the times intrinsic to some origin stories or whatever. It could be construed as magic. So I know like Raven too is pretty front and center in terms of like using magic.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to that's a testament, I think, to DC's like really huge stable of magic characters. That's that when we did Marvel, we were like, okay, it's Scarlet Witch, Loki, and Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
It was just like it's those.
Yeah.
Whereas when we talked about DC, it was like we do want to talk about those three big ones, but it's like there easily could have been 3 or 4 other ones that are easily like very important.
When you think of magic, you think
Yeah,
of these characters.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and so just to be clear, the ones that we're talking about are like magic users.
That's a good point.
Like
yeah.
cast spells.
Yeah, and like they're not ones that come from magic.
Yeah.
So like Wonder Woman technically is magic. I mean, that's where she comes. She gets her powers from magic.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Ancient, gods and stuff. That's where she gets.
She is clay, guys.
That is true. And there's tons of characters that do that, but we wanted to focus on actual magic users. And it is kind of hard to dwindle it down that way because some characters are only magic because of their weapon. And
Yeah.
it's like, well,
That's not really count.
And there's some characters that are like right on the line, like Etrigan
love him.
he does spells every once in a while. But for the most part, he's a big hulking dude that breathes fire.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I agree. I think it's like once you say we're going to do magical characters, if you don't narrow it down to spellcasters essentially or people that do magic,
Yeah.
you're talking about like almost like a half of the DC universe at that point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's a good point you brought up Etrigan. Because I mean, is he magic? Is he not? He does know spells.
Yeah.
but it's kind of like Beast now in X-Men. It's
Yeah.
like he's not a magician, but he knows magic.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, Etrigan is always just intertwined with magic characters. So it's hard to like, wait, no, he is magic. Wait, no, he's not.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing I was thinking about, like DC's got such a robust magic like lineup, and that's part of their world. And it is funny that their biggest character, Superman, lives in that world, and he's got a huge weakness to magic. What a bummer! What a bummer to be that guy in that world.
Which I think is funny that a lot of people argue that it's not like his weakness or
Yeah.
whatever. It's not a weakness of him. I'm like, but it is. Like,
They did it too much. Like you cannot like that. And I even have to admit, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. But the problem is that, like, especially like in the late 90s, mid 2000s, there are just all these scenes where he's getting like scratched by Wonder Woman's knife
Yeah.
and bleeding. Like it's just
there
it's
was
just there now.
In the new 52, since Cheetah is technically powered by magic, that her claws can rip through him, and he was transformed into a cheetah human
Yeah.
Superman hybrid. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's there.
Not
Like,
one of his
just get
greater
over it.
moments. That wasn't his highest moment.
I like that one because she turned like the whole Justice League into
Yeah, yeah,
like,
Oh my
cheetah
God.
hybrids, and I was like, ooh, the cheetah force.
You think some of them had to be like, this is better. I like this better now.
Yeah. So I mean, should we like kind of?
Well, of the big three, which one do we want to start with?
Let's do Dr. Fate.
Okay.
I think he's the most superhero looking one.
Well, and kind of more removed, too. I feel like he's less dark, more like cosmic and creepy.
Yeah.
He's very much. I mean, he's neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's not necessarily a good guy. He usually tends to be with like the Justice League or help them out, but he's been known to like kind of fuck them over.
Yeah.
And especially in like if you read Justice League Dark, he's kind of the antagonist
Yeah.
in a way. So like
I really like Dr. Fate's character because he's kind of terrifying.
yeah, because you don't know what he's the Lord of Order. Like I mean,
Yeah.
whatever he feels like is the best for the universe, he's gonna go for it.
Yeah, orderliness isn't itself like always amenable to like human happiness or safety.
Yeah.
Just like whatever's going to make the universe not implode or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was in the Injustice storyline, if I'm not too certain, that he saved Dinah Lance and Oliver
Mhm.
or Green Arrow, because he was like, you guys, I can't save this. The world needs to be destroyed because it's gone to shit. But if you guys save it, then it's fine.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that he was like, I'm not going to help, but I'm just telling you, you guys should go this way.
I just think it's interesting to have such a powerful character be neutral, or at least not have like very human failings.
Well, it gets complicated, right? And I think so. If you don't have a sense about who Dr. Fate is, the main Dr. Fate is a guy named Kent Nelson, who is sort of like a believer and knower of the occult. We're not going to really deep dive him, but it's worth saying, like, and that he uses a set of powerful items that gives him the power and the wisdom, and is often possessed by Naboo, who is this great cosmic lord of order. You know,
He needs a human host.
Yes,
essentially.
and it's usually with a helmet.
You know, one of my favorite storylines with Dr. Fate isn't from the comics, it's from Young Justice. It's that episode when, they're don the helm, and it's like, well, I need no. And then at the end, when Zatara makes the sacrifice to don Dr. Fate's helm, I'm like, this is really good and really sad.
Yeah, because I think it's Wally that takes it first. He takes the helm first because he has to.
Yeah, and
it was just
Zatara's
like, what?
Well, doesn't it threaten to take over Zatara or Zatanna?
Yep.
And then Zatara's like, no.
Yeah, because for some reason their line of magic, their lineage is perfectly akin to be the best host.
That's
for
why
him.
when it happened, I was like, Zatara makes such sense.
Yeah.
Why isn't this an actual thing?
Yeah. And I think later, I think it's in The Outsiders where you see Zatanna again, and she goes to see her father, but she can only see him, I think it's for an hour, like once every year or so, like that, without the helmet. And I'm just like, that's so sad.
Yeah, Naboo's kind of a dick in that thing.
Yep.
I thought the way that they did the vocal effects were that really cool. They had just like 9 people talk at once.
Yeah.
So it was like a baby and an old man, and they taught a dog to talk, and they all talked at once, and it's just super like weird and creepy.
Yeah. So he's really cool. I mean, he's usually in his tower. That's his base of operation, where he watches over the universe.
He's also one of those characters where it's like he has. Like, he's one of the magic characters that kind of has every power there is to. I mean, one, he's like, unlike Doctor Strange, Dr. Fate is physically a powerhouse, like quasi Superman-y kind of levels or something like that, and then also can blast stuff and send. It's also a very simple comic version of the Mystic. So rather than doing some clever trickery like John Constantine or some interesting incantation, he blasts you with a beam that looks like an onk.
Yeah,
that's usually how it works.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So he's a cool magic character, but very straightforward in the aesthetic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, like, and the other thing, unlike Strange, which is I think the direct comparison, he's not usually what do you call it, like divining from some great power. He is the power.
Yeah.
Like Naboo is the sort of thing. Right?
Yeah, and the Lords of Order.
The Lords of Order.
So next one, Zatanna.
I love her.
Yeah, she's one of my favorites. I think she's such a unique and cool character. Not only because the only way she does her spells is she says it backwards.
Because it requires intense focus.
Exactly. And I think that's amazing.
That is cool.
Like, I can't even say a sentence backwards. Like, good on you, Zatanna. So, she usually says, like, if she wants to, like, chain somebody up, she'll say, chain them up backwards.
Yeah.
And then it does it. So I think it's really cool. Earlier, she had a lot of ties with Batman.
Yeah, that's
right.
Well,
it's because Zatara and Thomas Wayne were friends.
Yes.
And Zatara actually taught Batman how to escape.
Escape, like Houdini-esque sort of stuff.
Which I think is really cool, and that's how kind of Zatanna was, like, realized or, like, shown into this universe, and then she's had a rich history ever since.
We got to talk about the look. Because she's also one of those characters that's so striking. And not that she doesn't have a really cool backstory or character. She certainly does. But she's also one of those characters that the look is so interesting and signature. She's going to be remembered on that basis alone. You know?
Yeah.
She's dressed up as a magician.
A stage magician.
Yeah.
Top hat, a wand, and everything.
The coat with the tails.
Yep.
Fishnet stockings for some reason.
Which I really like, too, because a lot of her stories, there's not many, which is really sad that, like, she doesn't have her own comic line.
Nowadays she's in Dark. Justice League Dark is typically.
I'm always happy to see her, like, show up. I'll literally read a series just to get to the trade where she's in it, because you don't get enough of her. I mean, it's really weird. But I like that in the stories that she has had, that she is a stage magician.
Yeah.
Like that's her day job. But she's doing real magic, and nobody fucking knows that it's real magic.
And you said you're always happy to see her, which is makes sense because she's always happy to be there in a weird way. I say that because DC we talked about has often a dark gothic supernatural magic vibe. She's good in that because she's really usually optimistic and upbeat and cheery. Every poster you see, every splash page of Zatanna, it's her pulling a rabbit who's a dragon out of a hat, and with a huge smile on her face. So she adds a certain like beacon of light to the whole thing.
Well, and I feel like her age also allows her the unique opportunity to appear in different things. Like she could appear in Young Justice, she could appear in Teen Titans, she could appear in Justice League Dark.
That's true.
She is one of those weird characters where her age does waver.
It kind of reminds me of the older generation of the younger Teen Titans, so like Dick Grayson and Wally. Like they can appear in a lot of different places because they're in that middle age.
There was a this is mainly for Kayla. I saw this thing on Twitter and people were shipping Dick Grayson with characters, and one of them was Dick Grayson as Zatanna. And I was like, at first I was like, that's weird, but then I was like, I kind of like that. I don't know why.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, I was like, that's kind of cool because, like, I don't know, it's cool that Batman learned from her father, and then I don't know, like their daughter, and
their
his
families
son
are tied
kinda,
together.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Sorry, weird.
No,
side
it's
note.
great. And in terms of powers, like Noah mentioned, there's the backwards speaking incantation. But I think she's a cool sort of example, like contrasted with Dr. Fate, in that Dr. Fate is a magical being, essentially, or at least Naboo is, right?
Yeah.
Whereas she's sort of in the middle of the three we're going to talk about in this. She is magically oriented. She's sensitive to it, but she had
her
to learn.
Bloodline is from magic,
but she had to learn it.
Yeah.
And so it's magic as like a set of skills and sort of things and practices and focus.
She's kind of the trope that you would think of like a sorcerer or like a Harry Potter.
I was exactly what I was thinking.
Because she's inherently natural with magic.
She's not a muggle.
Yeah. But she has to learn the spells and she has to learn how to focus it. But I think a good segue into the next one, which is Constantine, is that they do have a weird relationship. Zatanna and Constantine, like it's been depicted that, they've had...
people predicted it would be...
They've had like a relationship before. They've crossed paths a lot because they're both into the dark arts or, light arts.
The dark arts.
And I think that it's really cool to see their interactions because you have Constantine, which is a potty mouth, jackass.
Yeah.
And then you have Zatanna, which is a very level-headed, kind of normally cheery, very straightforward character. And it's just a really cool and interesting dynamic that they both play.
Constantine.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, like at this point, he's got more exposure than Mo because of just the desire to adapt him into the movies.
Unsuccessfully, but yeah.
Yeah, he was Keanu'd as well now. Which I actually didn't think was that bad, to be honest.
Okay.
I think it's funny because if you look at Constantine, you would never be like, magic!
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
but like that movie, that movie would be great if it wasn't Constantine.
Yeah.
Like if they weren't basing it off of some character that was already made. If this was just like demons take over New York, it would be great.
Yeah, they just licensed the name and then made their own movie that had nothing to do with that character.
Yeah, he wasn't even British.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah,
Which
for
is
whatever
like
reason.
one of the funnier things about him because he's exiled from Britain.
Yeah.
And he's a Brit usually in the US.
Yeah, but there aren't any British actors. So that's part. Yeah, they tried to do that.
Wait. Wasn't the love interest in that movie British?
Which is
my
a girl.
God.
There aren't any male British actors.
Okay.
No, it's true. And I like Constantine is such an interesting, weird character in this world because, like, so Zatanna has these powers that she has access to. If she does them right, she can do almost anything at any time.
Yeah.
She's a normal person. She's got a kryptonite. Constantine's so weird because it's like at any given time he almost has no powers.
Yeah.
But then he can trick people and demons or he knows like little spells that can absolutely win the day.
He's like sleight of hand.
Yeah.
Maxed out.
He has such a vast knowledge of magic
Yeah.
that it always plays into his favor. And that's what I've always liked about him, because like what you said, like he uses that to his advantage because he knows like this particular demon's skill set or magic set or whatever ability that they use.
I feel it's like Constantine's like mystic light, you know? It does a little bit of magic, but it's mainly for the edgelords out there that are like, I want a dark story about demons and gore and blood.
That's my story.
Yeah. Like in terms of sheer raw magical power, he's pretty low on the list. But if you're going up against a particular bad guy, especially if they're a demon, he's going to know that thing's allergic to lilacs or whatever.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he'll like lick a bubblegum wrapper and put it on their forehead and they'll turn into a pony. He just knows what to do. I think one of the coolest examples of kind of Constantine and Zatanna was the animated movie that came out.
Yeah.
And it's just like you just see both sides of their like raw power, especially Zatanna. Like she went Super Saiyan in that movie, and it was amazing. It was with Faust, which is another really great character
who I love.
I don't know why you like Faust. He annoys me so much.
So just to touch on just briefly, Faust is based on the what do you call it? The Goethe, I think, play originally, but kind of like he's like the German Shakespeare, and it's Dr. Faustus that does the deal with Mephistopheles, the devil. So they've adapted that for Felix Faust, who always appeals to sells his soul or kills his children or some crazy shit to some demon for like unlimited power and stuff like that. And I like that he's just a sneaky fucker.
Yeah.
It's like he's super powerful, but then like when he opens his mouth, it's just like, stop it.
Yeah.
Why are you a problem?
Yeah.
You're the way you are.
And we're not going to focus on it today, but honestly, there are so many bad... Another place I really think, not that Marvel can't compete at all, but that DC has so many awesome evil wizards and warlocks and demons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the Enchantress.
They definitely, I definitely feel like DC... It's just the whole supernatural thing. Like they have the supernatural thing really unlocked, and that includes like demons and things that go bump in the night, vampires, all that stuff. So I mean, that's a whole nother episode.
Everybody look up Blackbriar Thorn.
Yeah,
he's just so cool. Okay. But we got to move on.
I think we'll get into our little spotlights, ones that we feel like don't get enough attention, or we wouldn't really have a place to talk about them in depth, or at least give them, a pedestal to shine on, without doing them this way. And I think a good one to start off with would be Jared's pick.
Yeah. Ooh, the Phantom Stranger. Yes, I mean, this is definitely the kind of character you're describing, because it's like you would never really have a reason to just talk about him, but also he's sort of crucial to DC stuff. He does appear a lot, and I realized when I was doing this character that I no longer know how to spell the word phantom because of our podcast.
Oh yeah,
I spelled it wrong. I was like, no, it's F. Google. That's us. Okay, cool. But yeah, okay, so like we got a lot of different kinds of magic that we're talking about. There's sort of like more classic, like order magic, and then there's sort of more like whatever Zatanna does or whatever. This is one of the more fun kinds of magic, Bible magic. Yeah, Bible. Did you guys know this about the Phantom Stranger? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I didn't really know his origins that well. I just had a sense of like what he was, so we did some research and everything like that.
Yeah.
The first thing I want to say about him is the look and how cool it is and what it comes out of, which he comes out of the 1950s. He was written in 1952 for the first time, and it's a period when horror comics were way more popular than superhero comics. Because the 60s is really known as like the kind of set, like the Silver Age, or the second like rebirth of superhero comics or whatever. So Phantom Stranger's origins come from those sorts of comics where you'd have a narrator that would come in, like the Crypt Keeper. Think about like that kind of stuff, like Tales from the Crypt. Yeah, it's crazy. And I do not know the origin of this trope at all. Like, I think it used to be the case when you were like a kid where some creepy old person would come up to you and be like, I'm going to tell you a story. And you're like, well, okay. This is... Okay. So slowly he becomes sort of incorporated more and more into like the DC superhero sort of stuff, which is kind of what comics have done for a long time now, which is that once they've established like, I don't know, a superhero sort of thing, they'll go back and take characters like the Shadow or the Spirit or, that kind of stuff. So to give you a sense, let's talk, like I said, the look. He wears a sort of usually like a dark suit with like a kind of like trench coaty kind of cape thing going on.
Yeah.
Because he's cool.
Because he's a superhero.
Because he's a superhero. And then he
No
wears
capes.
he wears a fedora because he's a fucking nerd. Anyway. And his look is just really cool because he's always got the fedora, but it like the shadows cover his face.
You
Or
can
what-
see
like
his
a mask.
eyes.
Yeah, and so what's interesting about the character too is that he's also one of those characters, kind of like Zatanna, where the look itself is so interesting and compelling, and the
Iconic.
concept, absolutely, that it's kind of kept him around longer than whatever his story might be. The reason
Yeah.
I say that is that he's a lot like the Joker, where he's been given 4-ish. There's been more too, but 4 separate origins.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're all kind of, DC's got the attitude like, one of these could be true. There's an official one I'll get to in a second, but so this is how the origins basically work. The sort of one that's been going on for the most is that he's a fallen angel.
Yep.
That's super cool.
Yeah, that either sided against the good guys, essentially, and is being repentant, or he was like in the middle, where he's like, I don't know, demons or angels, whatever.
Well, that's funny too, because in DC, you don't ever hear about angels. Like, angels are almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Even though you hear about demons all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many demons.
Yeah.
There's like no angels.
That's true. And really, and like the thing, most of the origins here take place in a kind of biblical mythology, which is kind of cool because honestly, like, it's not pro or con, it's not sacrilegious, but it's also not like, openly like Jesus is the good one or whatever. You just don't see it in comics much, so it's cool that he kind of taps into that.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. The second one, I'll just get through. He's sort of like a Big Bang survivor, like a survivor from an old other universe, and he's got cosmic powers through that process.
Interesting.
And he'll just always be in the universe or something like
And
that.
his decision as a Big Bang survivor
Yeah.
is to dress up in a suit.
Just be strange. It's probably like one of those Galactus things where it's like the people see him as they're prepared to see him. Because if I haven't suggested, he is a tremendous cosmic magical power. Like, that's sort of where the space that he occupies in DC. He's sort of like, if you know the Watcher from Marvel, he's kind of like that because he's always in the periphery, being basically good and intervening every once in a while. He's a little bit more interventionist than the Watcher because there's no specific like thing that says he can't get involved. It's
Yeah.
usually just not wanting to overpower or like destroy the will of people.
He doesn't want to like outshine Superman.
Exactly.
I'll let him have the spotlight. It's fine.
So third origin, this one's not too PC these days, but it's an old story. It's called The Wandering Jew. Have you ever heard of The Wandering Jew? So some of us that aren't as maybe biblically as literate as the others, the idea is that it was a Jewish person who made fun of, or in some cases like flagellated Christ himself.
Yikes.
And then he's sort of, after turns out, oh, Jesus is Lord, or what, in the story,
Yeah.
he's forced to wander the world until the second coming. So that's an older sort of myth, and then they had readapted it for the Phantom Stranger. And then the last one, the most recent one, I think technically his origin now, is he is Judas Iscariot himself.
Oh.
Yeah, he's
So two of his origins, he fucked over Jesus Christ.
yeah.
And in return, he gets a bunch of powers.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, and the idea being most
see
of
a
the time-
problem here.
No, exactly. Well, put that under works in mysterious ways or whatever, because also he will wear the part of the recent mythos is that he wears the 30 pieces of silver around his neck, and that he has to keep doing good things to what do you call it, like pay for his sins, I guess.
I mean,
in a
interesting
sense.
concept for sure.
Absolutely. And so the coins fall away as he's done the right thing. And I think he's up to like 28 now. So he's still got 28 more to go.
Cool.
He
He's
should,
only
like-
done 2 good deeds thus far.
He should like outshine Superman more often.
He's really
Like,
got
Yeah,
it.
I mean-
So he hasn't really, and it's a weird thing because I guess he can't be too busy because he's got to like stand back and not intervene too much or whatever.
Yeah, what is he doing? He's he's just sitting back watching.
Yeah, and he's done some messed up stuff or good stuff depending on your attitude or whatever. He is the guy who created the Spectre in accidentally, or not accidentally for him, but it was a weird thing where like he takes the guy who becomes Corrigan, who becomes the Spectre. He leads them to the cave where he'll be gunned down or whatever. Yeah, so
it's such a good story. I mean, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's cool about him too is that he, in magical terms, he kind of represents the parts of magic that we think of as like unknowable and mysterious and sort of beyond human understanding,
like the divine.
Absolutely, and but the terrifying, the sublime, right? The ultimate, the terrifying,
the Old
powerful.
Testament God.
Yeah, absolutely, and far beyond our
comprehension.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that maybe, but for the most part, there's been stories too where he's sort of like worked with or been representative of the Lords of Order, so they've connected him to fate and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and he's maybe, to me, like right at the edge of not so powerful that he can still be involved in stories. You know what I mean? Because he can be hurt. Like if you got something like the Spear of Destiny or something like that, you can hurt him, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because it's just, I'm sure Wonder Woman has it lying around in her apartment.
Yeah, there's guys. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, he seems like a character that's underutilized, and that you could probably read a mini series just on him, and it'd be fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
they've got some good ones out there, and like in one of them, for instance, and they, because again, like how DC tries to connect all their magic and stuff. So he's one of the three. I think the fans will know this. There's a name for it, like the three great sins or original sins or something like that. So he, Pandora, and then later on something connected to the question. They're like the great betrayers, and his was obviously for betraying Jesus.
Yeah,
but and which is deemed a universal sin in this context. I want to be clear for the listener. I'm not a Christian, so I'm not really. I don't know. It just like sounds like I'm like, Jesus is great and you shouldn't kill him. Okay, anyway. Well, that's still my position.
You get
honestly.
powers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Noah.
So yeah, exactly. Get thee behind me, Satan.
I need a spray bottle here.
It's better than Jared's idea of sending people to Guatemala to put fake adamantium.
How about you're both wrong?
Yeah, I accept that. But the reason I mentioned the connectivity is that they get sent to the Rock of Eternity to be judged. So it has a Shazam tie-in or whatever. But yeah, so his powers, if it wasn't clear, magic of the highest order. Like he can make things appear, disappear, destroy, do those simple blasts. He likes to teleport. Usually he teleports when he's like, hey, the world's going to explode. So
Peace.
you might want to do something, Batman.
It's like, I survived one Big Bang. I can't do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to go wander. Anyway, so that's basically the Phantom Stranger.
Yeah, I think he's really underutilized. I mean, just even his origins are so fascinating.
Yeah.
And even just picking any of them, if not all of them, to do, I mean, it would be great. Magic characters are really underutilized.
But I'm glad that, to be honest, he's not used too much. I could use some more stories.
I would prefer him by himself as opposed to interacting with other characters in the DC universe. Like not exclusively. Others can pop up every now and then, but he seems like such an interesting character by himself.
For sure.
Like he bumps into Dead Man every now and then. Like
that's true.
It'd be great.
He's often like the what do you call it? Like he like warns them of great danger or something like that. So he's an interventionist kind of character too.
There's
so that's kind
a lot
cool.
of big characters that do that.
He's like
Dr. Fate does the same thing.
Yeah.
So does the Spectre. Well, usually Spectre's creating the problem.
Yeah.
And like the Phantom Stranger. So you have like all three of these people be like, hey, you're about to fucking die. Peace.
Well, and it's really funny too, because in comics, him and the Spectre have that interesting back and forth. And a lot of times he ends up being like the Spectre Wrangler, where he's like, okay, yeah, we got to blow up everybody, but maybe, not the good ones or whatever. And I guess the last thing on him is that one of his greatest powers is to constantly wear white gloves that never get dirty. I don't know why, but it's true. He always has these white gloves like he's a butler.
Wait, is one of his things...
They never get dirty?
No, they never seem to get dirty.
Oh. I was like, now that's a waste of power.
It's like, that's a very specific power. But yeah, he's just... The powers are so up there, but the look is so cool, And when you're reading comics, especially big crossovers, I think that's what's great about him is it's like, oh, the crisis is happening. It's like, oh yeah, the Phantom Stranger's in the DC universe. That's cool.
Oh yeah, you.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. On to Clarion the Witch Boy. Because why the fuck not?
Let's get a little evil.
We all chose like not even just B-list characters, but like D-list characters.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're really cool characters, but they're just nowhere to be found. They pop up, and then they're gone for years, pop up again.
Well, there's some debate here about whether that's good or not, because, I mean, I think some of, like, I like that Clarion's not overused, to be honest.
I mean, maybe. I think he's really underused.
Sure. He could be a little bit more used.
You're like, I was doing research and I found nothing.
So, Clarion, created by Jack Kirby, which a lot of people might not realize that Jack Kirby is the one that created this guy. He appeared in Demon number 7, so Etrigan, the demon, which we talked about earlier. He deals with a lot with magic, and this was in 1973. So just to go over his powers a bit, because they're weird, and to make it easier to understand, he's essentially like DC's Loki, but not as high of a level.
Sure.
If I could say that, I guess.
He's a baby trickster.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he is. He's a trickster. He likes to create chaos. He's not really out to necessarily hurt people or help people. He's just like, I'm just going to kind of like fuck up some shit and then like run away type thing. So he has a psychic link to his familiar, which is Teagle. And of course I found a character.
Of course.
That had to have an animal. But Teagle's really interesting because it's not necessarily clear so he has to be near Teagle for him to be okay and to use his powers. But if he's separated from Teagle, he's get weaker. So it's not clear if there's some type of magic that's happening there, or if it's just his psychology that he's just not necessarily focused or like really.
I know, like in Wicca, familiars are supposed to be like guardians, like protective.
Exactly. Yeah. Which Teagle does play a big part in that. And then, so he has magic. He was born in this place called Limbo Town. And yeah, I like that place. I like the name. It's one of his origins, one of the towns he was born in. And so everybody there practices necromancy and witchcraft, and that's what they are. And he's a witch boy. And his powers are magic, advanced spells. That's it. It's like, there's nothing else to say about it. But Teagle is really interesting with his powers because not only is Teagle gender fluid, but
I think all cats are gender fluid, honestly.
But Teagle also has the ability to stalk death, meaning he could pretty much put a stopper on death. Yeah. And he did that with Etrigan, and I believe it was the demon number 8 or 9 when Etrigan was poisoned. And Teagle helped him and he saved him. Yay. But it was for personal gain, so whatever. And he also has Teagle has this really funny ability he can be anthropomorphic, but he does it through dancing. So he has to dance to become that.
Does he have to keep dancing in order to maintain that form?
It's just like a spell type thing.
The worst part is his square dancing. He's got a square dance.
I'm just thinking of like a Neko in anime.
Ugh. And then some of the, I guess, cool equipment or things that he has that is kind of notable to mention. He has a cruciform, it's like a small wand that has power over dead flesh.
That's so cool.
That's interesting. And then he also has Castle Revolving, which is kind of like the other like House of Mystery or the other magical towers.
Or Tower of the Fate.
Yeah. But he just uses it to transport through time.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I don't think he has it now, but it's been in the stories that he has.
He seems like just like a Wiccan that has a concentration in necromancy or something.
Pretty much.
It seems kind of dark.
Yeah. So his origins are kind of like the Phantom Stranger, where there's been like 9 different iterations. He was in it for like an issue, then gone. In it for another story, gone. So I'll just focus on 3 that he's appeared, and that just kind of give you a better sense of who Clarion is. So in Kirby's run, he was from a dimension called Witch World. So not Limbo Town, but Witch World.
Very different.
Yeah. Where he was considered a child, and he didn't like that. So it was set up like in a weird caste system. Yeah. Where there's witch children, witch women, and witch men. And since he's a child, he can't do the necromancy or like the really fun spells.
He hasn't leveled up.
That stuff, that magic is rated R.
Yeah. So he can't do any of that he really wants to do. So he's like, fuck this shit. I'm just going to go up, to the world and just learn all this different magic. Etrigan runs into his path because he's creating all this chaos. And Etrigan keeps trying to banish him, back to his dimension and he just can't. So like the entire run is just him trying to catch Clarion and like send him back, and Clarion's like, fuck you, and then like disappears. So that's it. That's like the first iteration of him. He comes back in 2000 in Young Justice Sins of Youth, which was actually adapted into Young Justice in the storyline where he turns all the adults into kids.
Yeah.
But the kids are turned into adults in this story. So everybody flips.
That's hilarious.
And just to create chaos. But the weird thing about this Clarion is that he's considerably younger than his last iteration. He's like 5.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's like tiny.
Yeah.
And it's really weird, but it's a really good story. And that was in 2000. And then the most definitive edition, or the best version that they've used, and they've kind of translated this through other media he's been in, is The Seven Soldiers by Grant Morrison. So this is where Limbo Town comes in, because he's from this place called Limbo Town, where, just like before, they all practice necromancy. It's a vital part to, their town. It's subterranean. It's under Manhattan.
Classic.
Which is really weird.
Classic.
It's weird. I don't know.
It's in the subway.
And there's this whole like mythos of the Croatoans and the people that disappeared centuries ago, and they're descendants from them, or they are them. It's really weird. So the funny thing about these people is they're like dark Puritans. They even dress like Puritans.
And that's his aesthetic.
Yeah, that's his aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like he has the black, like little kind of like
buckle
outfit.
shoes.
Yeah. And like the little horns out of hair. Like it's really weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's just funny to like look at this comic. They all look like Puritans, but they're all blue. So that's another thing to mention about him. He's blue because that's just his race. That's the witch people.
Yeah.
I guess if you want to call them that.
I do.
Yeah. But it's really funny because they're the opposite of Puritans, because Puritans are like, witchcraft is bad. These guys are like, witchcraft is great, but we're going to go necromancy.
I wonder with their witch trials, where they're like, he's not a witch. We cannot get him for not being a witch.
Well, the funny thing
He's going to church.
The
That's
funny thing
hilarious.
about that is that they act just like Puritans.
Yeah.
In that, like, so they force people not to think of the outside world. So the outside world's no. We're the only thing that exists. You're not allowed to know about anything else. Clarion, being the protagonist of the story, does not like that. He starts questioning all of
now
that.
you go to your room and you revive that corpse. Yeah. You do that, young man.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So the long story short with this definitive run with him is he finds out about the Sheeta. So this is freaking weird. The Sheeta are the future race of humans a billion years in the future that might be genetically modified with like scorpions.
Wait, so he's a Scientologist. Okay. No, cool.
So the people down there see that and they're like, we're about to be extinct. We're going to die.
Yeah.
And so these witch people have this ability to become horgles, which
That's the best thing about magic and fantasy is they just make up a word that and then that's a story.
And I'm sorry if this gets confusing with the names. I'm just as confused with these names. So like horgles are essentially when you fuse into with your familiars. So with Grant Morrison's version, everybody has a familiar.
Yeah.
And you can fuse with your familiar. Only at like a certain level or a certain class level can do this. And so when the sub-missionaries, so there's like, I think they're called the sub-missionaries of Judah or something like that. There's 3 of them and they're like the council. And they see the Sheeta. They all transform into this horrible creature, chase Clarion. Clarion's like, shit, I need to warn people about this thing. He never gets to him, ends up fleeing to the surface world. Meets this dude called, I think it's, oh man, what's his name? Melmoth. Because
what about your Aunt Melmoth? You don't remember? That's so weird that you forget.
All right. So he flees to the surface and he runs into this guy named Melmoth. And turns out this guy impregnated women centuries ago and created all the witch people.
Just like a man.
Yeah. So he goes back down to Limbo to pretty much warn people about the destruction of it. And they're like, you're a blasphemer, and try to burn him at the stake. So I'm like, cool, you guys still kept some Puritan tendencies of burning people at the stake for, blasphemy.
We need to bring that back.
Yeah. I mean, so his story is really, I would just read it. I don't want to give the whole ending or anything else away on that, but that's Clarion. So you might know him from Young Justice of being this really annoying voice.
Standout character.
Yeah, I guess.
He was like sports. He was like sports master. He was like, oh my god, it made you love that character so much.
He is great, and I love the fight between him and Dr. Fate.
So
It's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are his origins. There's Limbo Town, Witch World. He also just randomly showed up and turned everybody into kids and adults and vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's really underutilized as far as like a powerhouse of magic, or at least being, instead of like Abracadabra being like the Titans villain, he could easily be like a main Titans villain. So.
He's got the whole scary child thing going on. Like remember from The Simpsons where Marge is like, there's just something really unsavory about a child flying a kite at night. And they cut to Bart and he's just looking at it like, hello, mother dear. It's terrifying.
Children are terrifying.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
it's like
all I think about when I think of him.
It's like a Damien Omen kid.
There's an image or a scene, I can't remember in which Young Justice it was, but he's sitting there and he's in the dark and you see Teagle like come on his lap and he's like, good Teagle. Good Teagle.
Oh, God. It's just all so unsettling.
Yeah. I mean, but I think he's such an interesting character because he's terrible as far as what you would think a villain would be.
Yeah.
But he has an entire comic run where he's the protagonist.
Yeah.
Because most people think of him as the villain or as that creepy kid.
Yeah.
And he's the protagonist for this one.
I
He tried to
definitely
save his
did
people.
not know that he had his own comic run.
Yeah, and Grant Morrison did it. Of course, it's batshit crazy, and it's weird, but it's really good. And the artwork is amazing. I feel like that's one of the moments where the artwork definitely helped the story, or felt like that was the only artwork that could be for that story.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's Clarion. He has a cat named Teagle.
Teagle.
He
Creepy witch boy.
yeah, I mean, Clarion the witch boy. I don't know.
I love in Young Justice though when they're like, "Oh, it's the familiar. We've got to get him," and he's like, "Get him, Teagle!" And then Teagle turns into a gigantic, ferocious lizard cat thing.
He has size-altering abilities, so he can turn into a giant
Oh,
cat.
this is going to be much harder.
Yeah, I just like that twist that it's like, "Oh, this is gonna be easy. We just got to kill a kid."
Yep, don't fuck with Teagle.
Yeah.
All right. So getting to my character, she is a little bit more lighthearted than their predecessors that you guys chose.
Hey, it's magic in DC. It's a little dark.
Yeah, no, that's true. But Amethyst, who I chose, certainly isn't. And I mean, I think she's such an obscure character. And I love her aesthetic so much that I needed to bring her to the forefront. This was the perfect opportunity.
Like, I feel like if you were to be a magic user in DC,
I would be Amethyst,
that
right?
would be you.
I love
You remember
her.
that cartoon character Jim? Yeah. That's what it reminds me of.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So if fans of Steven Universe, I don't even watch that show, but I was just like thinking of it the whole time I was reading her origin story. But yes, I'm doing Amethyst. She's princess / queen, depending on the story, of Gemworld. And in DC, Gemworld is basically one of the worlds where the fairy come from. So already her magic is a little bit lighter than like, devils.
Like mine
demons.
living underneath the subway system, practicing necromancy.
She's from Fairy World.
I betrayed Jesus. I wear pink alive.
But basically, she first appearance was Legion of Superheroes number 289 or 298 in 1983. So kind of a late comic book character in terms of other magic users. But basically, her parents were rulers of Gemworld because House Amethyst is like the highest of the 12 houses, and obviously, the 12 houses are all like they get their powers from some sort of stone.
Yeah,
It's like
they're
a
like
birthstone.
they're the Targaryens of the
Well, not as bloodthirsty.
Except
Yeah.
nice, because her parents are murdered by Dark Opal. So another house was trying to usurp the Amethyst house.
Oh, Opal is definitely the evilest of the gems. We've all known that.
You wouldn't think so. It's so like shiny and multicolored. But yeah, she's saved by a witch, Citrina, and she's sent to Earth. She's raised by the Winstons, so she takes on Amy Winston is her like alter ego. And she is 13. At her 13th birthday party, she's given an amethyst necklace by Citrina, who's like trying to like ease her into her heritage. But she gets kidnapped by Dark Opal, sends an ogre to kidnap her and brings her to Gemworld. But while the ogre's dragging her to Dark Opal, she starts aging rapidly because time works different in Gemworld. So by the time he gets to Dark Opal, she's like this 20-year-old woman.
That's not confusing for a 13-year-old at all.
No, yes, it's definitely a little bit of Shazam going on where it's like, I'm a kid, but I'm in an adult body right now. But she is saved by the witch that saved her initially, Citrina again, and one of House Amethyst's servants named Granch, who basically just explains that all of the 12 houses, the drama there in Gemworld, that Amethyst is like the rightful ruler.
They are our savior.
Yeah, exactly. So from that point on, she spends half of her time in our world, where she's still a child, and half of her time trying to balance all of the drama going on in Gemworld. Her powers probably should have started with that, but she reminds me a lot of what the Green Lanterns can do, because you mainly see her powers using like creating shields or weapons out of constructions, but they're purple as opposed to Green Lantern doing whatever color they are. But
Green.
she casts spells too.
Yes.
And also the description for what she can do with magic was anything that she can conceive magic doing, she can do.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And she's also magic resistant. So she doesn't have that superhero or Superman, like a little Achilles heel there.
Yeah.
It's quite the opposite.
It's just funny with these characters that are like D-list characters.
Yeah.
Where like you look at their powers and they're like,
holy shit, they could do anything.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's why you're not used.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, yeah. No, she's super OP. One of the things at the end of, because she kind of has 3 different origins too, when they rebooted for New 52 and for Rebirth.
Yeah.
But towards the end of her initial, during Infinite Crisis, Dr. Fate comes to her and is like, you're one of the Lords of Order to help stop the Lords of Chaos. And then so she works with them. She's one of the only people to survive Spectre's attack on the magic users. And she's the only surviving Lord of Order to carry on into the 10th age of magic. Because, like that whole Infinite Crisis was the end of the 9th age. She's the only surviving one to live to the 10th age.
Yeah, give her more comics.
Yeah, she's pretty OP.
Yeah, she's pretty badass.
Her personality is all bubbly and sweet, and she's kind of like Wonder Woman in terms of like, I'm for justice and good and love.
This is Kayla.
I love her so much. In New 52, her origin story is kind of similar. But her mother is still alive, but she basically sent her to Earth to protect her from all the drama of the houses. And
it's very like Starfire-like.
Yeah, exactly. In the New 52, her name is like Amaya too instead of Amy, and I'm like, no, just make it Amy. That's fine.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be that close to Amethyst.
She's already Amethyst.
This reminds me of that scene in Wreck-It Ralph, where it's just like, I'm a princess. It's like, it's like, did he try to poison you, or did they capture you? In DC, they could be like I'm a princess. Oh, so your mom sent you away from a dying planet to protect you from the evils there? Totally.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But that's in New 52's when she joins Justice League Dark, which is, again, a hilarious dynamic to think about, because she's just like, ha ha.
She's not dark.
Yeah, exactly. But she's brought back to Earth in an effort to reconnect Tim Hunter with magic. Amethyst remains on the team in order to recover the portal stone from John Constantine, and everyone is like, don't trust a word that fucker says.
I'm sorry, that's just hilarious to me that she's in Justice League Dark, because you have all these characters that are brooding and all emo and goth and stuff like that, and she's sitting over there all strawberry shortcake and shit. They're like, oh, I just hate you.
She has like bright blonde hair
No, I
and
didn't get to read it.
purple all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
But
she's great.
Yeah. Then she goes on an adventure through the House of Mystery with Black Orchid and Frankenstein, and they kind of destroy stuff there. During Trinity War, she's seen amongst the superheroes that feel the disturbance when Shazam picks up Pandora's box. And then last reboot for Amethyst was in DC Rebirth. So when they relaunched that, she became younger and joined Young Justice, and that's kind of where she is now.
Yeah, her personality has changed a bit.
I remember you telling me that, because I haven't read the Young Justice.
One.
Yeah.
I mean,
and now she's like edgy.
Yeah, she's more edgy, and she's more, because she knows everything about where she comes from, and she's literally in Gemworld, and the story starts off with the bad people from Gemworld attacking Earth.
Yeah.
So it's a weird dynamic to see like her a little different. It's like, this should have been in Justice League Dark.
Yeah.
Like this Amethyst should have been.
She's like edgy. She's like in a band now.
Instead of she has like purple streaks in her hair.
Yeah.
She's punk now.
Yeah,
I think we're describing Gem and the Holograms now.
Yeah.
But yes, no, I think Amethyst is super powerful, super underused. I mean, Jared was like, I don't even know who this is. Please talk about her.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, because we were all talking about like which ones we were gonna do, and I was going back and forth. He was like Phantom Stranger. I'm like, of course you would. I'm like Clarion. You're like, of course you would.
And I was like, I think I might do Raven or Amethyst.
Yeah, we're like,
Why do we keep doing this? We keep picking characters that are so much like our personalities on accident.
Is it on accident?
Yeah, I didn't mean to, but I think it's definitely kind of true. You know?
All right, comic book recommendation time to round out this mystical, magical DC Mages episode. I don't know why I said all that. I will start with mine, I guess, because I'm the only one prepared right now.
Oh, ouch.
I'm kidding. God,
Hey.
jeez.
We're ready.
So I'll just do the one that I was originally talking about. It's the Seven Soldiers of Victory. It's by Grant Morrison. Came out in 2005. Now, this one, it's not only about Clarion. There's a bunch of different people in there, like Mr. Miracle and Shining Knight and Zatanna and Frankenstein. A bunch of random characters in there. But you can pick up the Clarion ones separately or just get the entire thing all together. But that's Clarion.
Yay.
Yay.
Oh, I can go next. This is really easy, guys. Yeah, in 2012, DC published a volume just called Amethyst, and it was a collection of some of the highlights of her story up until that point. So it's part of the Showcase Presents series. It has the reprinted character origins, like I was talking about, the Legion of Superheroes, number 298 back in the 80s. The original Amethyst Princess of Gemworld 12 limited issue series, Amethyst Annual number 1, DC Comic Presents number 63, and the first 11 issues of the ongoing Amethyst series at the time.
Jeez.
So get that one.
It's literally all amethyst.
Yep. If you want a complete, round evaluation of the character, summary there, just pick up that one.
Heck yeah. Okay, check out the Phantom Strangers old volume. I don't think it's the first volume because the first is 1952. This is the one that's in 1969, right?
As old as my
came
dad.
out in June. Exactly. That's why I picked it. And, no, but it is really fantastic stuff. I mean, honestly, even if you can't find it, because I don't know that they've actually compressed this yet. If you can't find the single issues, at least go on Google Images and look at these stories. The stories were a lot like Swamp Thing stories. You know what I mean? So it's like different kinds of horror adventures or scary stories each issue. It's like serious Scooby-Doo.
It's like Supernatural,
Yeah.
but back then.
Correct.
With the guy in a fedora.
Yes. That's basically it. So check that out.
All right. Thanks
guys.
Thank you. God.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at the Fantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.